Hi, today I'm going to talk to you about the state of gender equality in academia through the lens of women's rate of authorship in academic journals. I am going to focus on three specific disciplines, and I have sampled for each discipline either 4 or 5 journals and checked the rate of women authors among them for each decade. The academia has been in a long process of transition away from being male-dominated to being gender equal. This has been realized in different forms in academia. For example, in hiring for academic positions, or another example in promotion through the academic ranks, or in another example in increasing the rate of women in academic decision-making hubs, such as journal editorial boards. So in all of these examples, we have ways in which a more gender equal situation is being realized. And one of these places in which this strive to gender equality has been realized is in academic journals, specifically with regards to the rate of women authors as compared to that of male authors. Publishing in academic journals is very central to academic careers. For example, scholar success is measured according to it. How many articles have you published? In which journals? What is the impact factor? These are central metrics for academic careers. Another way in which publishing in academic journal is very central is that it is a major criterion for career advancement. When it comes to hiring or promoting someone, usually a lot of weight is given to the publishing track record. And third, it is where much of the academic discussion is held and where debate in the field is advanced. In this video, I am going to look at changes in the percentage of women's authorship in a number of international journals. I am going to focus on the last 2.5 decades, that is the 2000, the 2010s, and the 2020s, with the latest data pertaining to 2025. Since the rate of women's authorship varies across different disciplines, I will compare 3 disciplines: geography, sociology, and political science. Moreover, I wanted to clarify that I am comparing gender authorship across all types of journal pieces, and not just journal articles. This also includes review articles, commentary, replies, editorials, book reviews, and any other type of piece published in academic journals. The logic being that it does not matter what type of piece it is, as they all give voice to scholars and indirectly to their identity, in this case, gender identity. Last, I wanted to give a disclaimer that I am referring to gender here as a binary construct of women and men, while in reality we know that gender identity can be more complex. This is done out of practical reasons. Okay, let's dive into the data. The first slide is the average rate of women's authorship by decades for the 3 examined disciplines. Here you can see a positive trend of growing female authorship across all 3 disciplines, yet at very different paces. Women's authorship in geography, that is the gray line at the top, has seen the most remarkable rise in these 2.5 decades. It began around 33% for women authors, which means 67% for men, and is now approaching 50%, which would be an equal rate of authorship for men and women. If you are striving towards gender equality in authorship, 50% women authors is what you are striving towards. And certainly, geography as a discipline at least the journals I sampled, is approaching this 50% mark. The journals sampled in sociology had a better rate of women authors in the 2000s, yet the rate of increase is slower, and for now it is just shy of the 40% mark. So sociology began in the 2000s as a more gender equal place than geography, but because the rate of increase is slower, geography surpassed it. And then you have political science, which is seeing a higher increase in women's authorship rate than sociology, yet from a very low starting point of 20%. This means that as of the 2000s, political science authorship was still dominated by 80% men, so I would say male dominated. Moreover, the improvement has brought the women's rate just above the 30% mark, which leaves much to be desired. And of course, from the comparison between the three, you can see intuitively that political science is lagging behind in the effort to bring gender equality with regards to journal authorship. Now let's move to the journal breakdown within each discipline, starting with geography. Here we can see among the 4 examined journals, 2 had reached a modest overrepresentation for women scholars, with women getting more than 50% of authorship in the current decade. So the top 2 journals in this graph show a modest overrepresentation of women in the 2020s, while the other 2 show a slightly larger underrepresentation of women. This is why, when averaged together, geography reached just below the 50% mark of women authors. Moving to sociology, here the trend is a bit confused. Some journals show a decisive trend towards a higher rate of women among their authors, while others are seeing decreasing rate of women authors. So you can see 3 of the 5 sample journals are seeing an increase across the decades, as you would expect. But 2 of them are seeing a decrease, one even a sharp decrease, I would say, from as high as 45% of women authors in the 2000s to only around 33% in the 2020s. The end result is fragmentation, which the average of sociology journals does not reveal. So, if we just looked at the first slide, the one that showed the entire discipline, or at least the sample journals, you wouldn't know there is a high fragmentation between journals within this discipline. At the top, we have journals with a greater than 45% of women authors, and at the bottom, this rate is currently in the low 30s. So very different trajectories for these 2 groups. And last, we have the journals from political science. Again, we see fragmentation, but here at the lowest group, we currently have women's authorship reaching just 25% of authors, which means around 75% of men authors. This means much of political science journal authorship is still male-dominated. So, what can we learn from the data I just showed you? First, that there is an overall trend of a growing rate of women authors among academic journal authorship. The general trend is very clear. Second, that disciplines show a different pace of increase and represent a different starting point, as we have seen, for example, how geography started lower than sociology but then rose to a higher position. Third, that specific journals can see a plateauing of the increase in the rate of women, and even an opposite trend of decreasing rates of women authors. So, the move to greater equality is not a necessary eventuality. And actually, journals can see a decrease in the rate of women. Going back to the discipline comparison slide, you can see that the pace of change in political science is so slow that total equality may be reached as late as the 2060s. So even though there is an increase, it will take so long to reach gender equality that at the current pace, we are talking about the 2060s. The pace of sociology is also quite slow, but a higher starting point may bring equality earlier. Now we understand the general trend towards gender equality in journal authorship. We understand the differences between the three examined disciplines, and we also understand the differences within each discipline. The next step may be going further back in time to see the state of gender equality before the 2000s. This next step can also involve me covering other disciplines and more journals within each discipline. If you would like to weigh in on what this next step should be, please write your thoughts in the comments below. Another possible next step would be to somehow interpret this reality. How to interpret these figures? Why are some disciplines and some journals more gender equal than others? Why did the situation in geography virtually reach equality while the situation in political science is still very far from being equal? If you want me to dedicate a video to that topic of interpreting these gaps, please write in the comments below, together with any question or comment you may have. If you like this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.